Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's Google for Education webinar, brought to you by Google as well as its Edu partners. Those of you who are some of our regular viewers will know that this series of webinars is aimed at equipping educators and teachers with experiences and best practices within the Google for Education tools from fellow teachers and partners in Africa. So for this week, just as many of our previous weeks, the webinar will be facilitated by Cloud Edu from South Africa, MKB Consulting from Nigeria, and Power IT from Kenya. And in today's session, we're going to be looking at how we can travel the world virtually. Many of our students have been stuck in some sort of lockdown somewhere and not maybe been able to visit places around the world. And today we're going to have a look at some awesome tools that can bring those worlds to your students. We have three presenters today. We have Kevin from South Africa, who will be telling us a little bit about something called Tour Creator. We have Jane Onyenyechi from Nigeria, who's going to be looking at Google Earth. And then we also have Dylan Langheim from South Africa, who's going to be looking at Mind Maps. So our first presenter today is Kevin Sherman. He is the Director of Professional Development at Cloud Edu in South Africa, one of the partners. He's got years and years of experience in teaching, and he's also a Google certified trainer and innovator. And he's going to be telling us a little bit more about Tour Creator and one or two other cool tools within that that can help bring these worlds to your students. So I'd like to welcome Kevin, and also I'm very excited to hear what he's going to share with us today. So take it away, Mr. Sherman.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks very much. Welcome, everybody. I want to thank Google for giving me an opportunity to wear my Globe shirt, the first time I've had such an opportunity since I got it a few months ago before lockdown. I am a bit of a geo nerd, so I do get into this stuff, and I love playing with the Google Geo tools. And the title of today's session probably should have been using Google for virtual, to travel the world virtually rather than G Suite, although I am going to show you one example of how you can connect these tools a little bit. My focus is going to be on Tour Creator. It's one of the less known applications in Google, but it's one of the more exciting ones for creating resources for students, but also, and our hope is always that teachers will put these tools in the hands of their learners and allow them to explore, use, and create using the Google tools. So my first example today is actually going to be found in a Google form, and I'm going to ask Lisa to drop this link in the chat. Now, I do have a warning for those of you who are watching live today. If you're viewing this live and you are looking at it on a cell phone and you click the link in the chat, it's going to kick you out of the live stream and you won't be able to watch what we're doing. So these will be available in the chat once this is posted live, and you can always click on those links later on, or you can rewatch the video to get these links. These will be available pretty much forever. So I'm going to jump over to this form that I've got, and you'll notice here that I've got a Google form, and in the description of the form, there is itself a bit.ly link that takes us somewhere else. And this is one of the things that people don't always know about Google Forms. If you put a hyperlink into the form description, or even into the question, into the description of a question, that link is a live link. And so you can provide other resources to your students using links that are embedded inside a Google form, which is really useful. So in this case, I've got a day in Amsterdam. This is a tour that I created a couple of years ago. And I've got some questions in this form to help guide the viewer through what I want them to pay attention to. So it also can be used as a kind of an assessment. So I've got questions like, what feature of urban geography will you find at, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that word in Dutch, and why do you think all the tourists group in certain paths at this area in Amsterdam, Bejenhof? And then along Prinsengracht Canal, what is the most common form of transportation? So I'm asking questions here about what people are going to see on my tour, and that helps to focus my students' attention. So let's take a look at that tour. This tour starts out actually in a different view. I think when you open up the tour, it's looking right at that building. And I started the tour here because when I was in Amsterdam a year and a half or so ago, I was at a meeting at the Google offices in Amsterdam, and I took a photo there. That's actually me at the Google offices. And I just want to include this because I want you to see that you can insert what are called points of interest into a tour. So that particular symbol right there that you can see, that is a point of interest, and you're able to add information to points of interest. So let's just scroll around here to Market 33. There's another point of interest right there at the front door, and we can see here that Market 33 unites a diverse range of street food styles, blah, 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 blah. And there's even a link here to take you to more information about Market 33. So I added all of those details myself. And if you're interested, you can click through the scenes in this tour on your own time. And you'll notice those scenes are available right down here at the bottom of the screen. So we've got scene 1 of 8, and I can click through to those scenes. And because we've got a lot of data in these images, it's going to take a while for them to load if you're on a slower connection. Oh, look, there's another point of interest right there. I remember having a bagel at Bagel and Beans a few years ago when I was here. And then we've got another scene coming up here. So those are basically how you can create scenes and create a tour with points of interest for your students. All right. And at the end of this talk, I'm going to show you how to do that. But before we go there, I want you to have a little bit better understanding of how all of this fits together. How did I get those images? Where do they come from? Well, Tour Creator works really nicely with Street View. And essentially those two Google tools play together. They work together. And Street View Imagery is available from all over the world. This map shows you where the Street View imagery is available. Those areas in blue have Street View imagery. And if you want to know what areas are covered, you can always go to www.google.com/Street View/explore, and that will take you to more information about Street View. I've zoomed in on that map here for Africa, and you'll notice that Africa has much less coverage than other parts of the world. We've got very good coverage in South Africa and throughout Botswana, into parts of Zimbabwe. We've got pretty good coverage in Kenya. But my friends, unfortunately, in Nigeria only have about 25% of the country covered in Street View imagery. But I'm going to give you guys some tips on how you can fix that problem. I'm going to give you some solutions in a few minutes. Now, how do you get to this Street View imagery? Well, if you're in Google Maps, you may be familiar with what is called, commonly called the peg man, but I prefer the more gender-neutral peg person. And that peg person helps you to find where this imagery is located. And there are two kinds of images that will be revealed when you use Pegman. So when you drag Pegman onto a Google map, you get a couple of different kinds of images. You either get these circles or you'll get these blue lines. Now, because this happens to be in Amsterdam, we actually have blue lines tracing the route of Street View imagery that was taken from the canals of Amsterdam. So Street View imagery is actually water view or canal view imagery in Amsterdam. But we've got lots of Street View images on the streets of Amsterdam, but we also have these little circles, and those are the telltale clues that there's another kind of image here, and that other kind of image is known as a 360 photo or 360 photosphere. So this just shows you a Google map image, that's Street View, and here's our Pegman down in the bottom corner. It's being dragged onto a map. We get all these blue lines, and if we drop Pegman onto the blue lines, we switch from the map view into the Street View in Google Maps. Again, there's that Pegman's going to come along. He'll be in the bottom right, and he's coming up here, and we see all these blue lines. Those are places where there is Street View imagery. Now, photospheres are the other kind of image that we can see in Street View, and a photosphere is a 360-degree photograph. It basically is a picture that you're standing inside of. And this is what you would see if you went to a photosphere on your own page. You'll notice that on the left, you can see my local guide in Street View. I'm a local guide. I don't have that many points, but I have posted my own Street View photos, and they're 360 photospheres that I posted. And so those are listed on the left, and they're connected to my Google profile. Once I post those, they become available to other people. If I post them publicly, they become available to others in Google Maps. So anybody in the world can find my photographs. And in fact, I'm very fortunate. There's one image I have that's been viewed 1.5 million times, only because it happens to be in a very popular destination. Now, I'm going to show you an example of a 360 photo on my device right now. I'll show it to you in just a second. Lisa's going to drop that into the chat if you want to take a look on your own device. But again, a little warning, if you're watching the live stream on a phone, you may not want to click that. So when I go over to this image here, I'm actually in Street View. I'm going to just jump to the map view so you can see where I am. Go ahead here. Take us out, sorry. Okay, so here I am in KwaZulu-Natal province in South Africa. Not a lot of stuff going on in this image. It's a very rural area. If I switch to the satellite view, you'll be able to see how rural it is. But when I switch back to the map view and I come down here and I select the Pegman, I'm going to just zoom in on this so you can see what I'm clicking on. There's Pegman right there in the bottom right-hand corner. When I click on Pegman and I drag him over, it's going to reveal that there's some photospheres on this map. Or he should reveal there's some photospheres. Sorry, I may have zoomed out too much. Turn off that tool. And it takes a moment, and there we are. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this on the one that there are 2 photospheres now. And this is the one that I took. Okay, and I know it's the one I took because that happens to be my wife sitting on a rock on the bottom of that photosphere. Now, I didn't just take this because it's a beautiful view. I actually took it because it's a heritage site in South Africa, and it's one of the sites where we have what is called San rock art, one of the indigenous peoples of Southern Africa. And this particular image is known as the Rosetta Stone of San rock art because it was the tool that researchers used to uncover the meaning behind the San rock art glyphs, as they're called. So that's an example of a photosphere. Now, how did I take this? I'll come back to that in a second, but it was not done with any fancy tools. I wasn't walking around with a big Street View pack or anything like that. But you can see that there are different ways I can scroll around that image and actually see things in a 360-degree view. Now, I was using it on a laptop. You could swipe around the screen with your finger if you have a touchscreen Chromebook, or if you're looking at an Android or iOS device using the Street View app on your phone. You can also click the compass and move your phone up and down to rotate the location. And that's kind of fun to see, so that if you are moving around, it's as if you were moving around looking at the view and you were standing there yourself. Or you can try Google Cardboard, and I'll show you what a Google Cardboard is in just a second. Now, how did I take those photos? I took the photo, and this is my call out to my brothers and sisters across the continent where we don't see Google Street View imagery. You can still go out and create your own photospheres. So how do you do that? You do that with the Street View app on your own phone. There's a Street View app you can download. It's free for iOS or Android. You can paint a room or a landscape in just under 5 minutes. And then you can upload that to various platforms, including to Google Maps, and share that with your learners and other people in the world. How do you do that? Well, once you launch that Street View app, if you just click on the camera icon that you'll see appear in the bottom of that Street View app, it will walk you through the process. It will show you exactly how to create a 360 photosphere. And you just have to play around with it. I do recommend practicing a little bit. Now, how do you view these images? Well, as I mentioned, you can view them on a laptop, a Chromebook, a cell phone, a tablet. You have various possibilities for using your finger on touchscreen devices, but there's also Google Cardboard. I happen to have a Google Cardboard here with me. It is the most bland cardboard I could find, literally made from brown cardboard. And essentially with Google Cardboard, you just take your phone, you insert it into the cardboard, you close it up, and then you can view through these lenses. You'll be able to have a 360 view. And as you move around, it will appear as if you are in the photograph that you wanted to stand inside of. So it's a really cool tool and not very expensive. I don't know how to get Google Cardboard outside of South Africa, but if you get in touch with Cloud EDU, we can point you to people who provide cardboard in our region. Now, creating a tour. This is what I'm going to demonstrate right now for you. But before I do, I want you to do some thinking about when you're creating a tour. There are some critical questions to ask. Where do you want your learners to go? Obviously, the most important question. What details do you want them to observe? So you remember I had those points of interest, those little information icons. That's really important to think about. What do you want your learners to be looking at? And then what activities can you build around their virtual visit to guide them through the tour and also to scaffold their learning? And that's where I use that Google form to guide tours. So let's take a tour. Let's take a look at this tour that I've just created. And Lisa can drop this link into the chat if you want to see what I've done. I'm going to actually be adding to this tour, and I can be working on the tour while you're viewing it. That's one of the cool things about Tour Creator. So I'm not going to go through this entire tour, but this is when you start with the Tour Creator screen, and I'm going to share a tip sheet with you in a moment. When you start with the Tour Creator screen, you land here. You can create a new tour up here. You see the new tour button, but I'm actually just going to go into my existing All Around Africa tour. It's going to take just a moment to load, and I'm going to go ahead and edit the tour. Now, I've got several cultural sites here. I've got Game Pass Shelter, I've got Robben Island, I've got the Relay Gallery in Nigeria, which is a contemporary art space and gallery in Lagos. I've got the Bashir Tofa Mosque, which is a street view image that I located. And then jumping over to my friends in Kenya, the Joy Adamson Gallery is in the National Museum of Nairobi. And then I've got the African Heritage House, which is also in Nairobi. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a scene. So let me just show you where I'm doing that. At the bottom of my screen, I have this blue Add Scene button. And when I click on that, it's going to ask me for a street view image. Now, whenever it starts out here, it always starts with the Googleplex in Mountain View, and you just need to get used to that. I'm actually going to do a search for a scene that I already know exists, and that's something that's really important to check out before you, let's see if it got to the right place. It did. Before you start going into Tour Builder, what's really useful is to locate the thing that you want to put into your tour using Google Maps. So here I am in the Great Zimbabwe and Maps. I pulled my Pegman over, and I happen to know that there are several, there's no street view imagery here, but there's a little street view imagery here, but there are also some photospheres that I can use. Okay, and this photosphere imagery will be really useful here. So I'm just going to take this first one that came up. That looks good. Add a scene. I'm going to head over to title that scene Great Zimbabwe. And I could be more specific if I wanted to. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And I can then head to Wikipedia and just to grab some information to give people a little bit of context. Now I'm going to go ahead. Don't worry, I'm not cheating here. I promise I will credit my source. So here I've gotten the description from Wikipedia, and my credit for text is Wikipedia. And my credit for the street view image is Street View. Now, if I wanted to figure out who created this photosphere, I could add that person's name if I wanted to. You also have the ability to add ambient noise. So if you made a recording of the sound of your location, you can add a sound file, or you could record yourself speaking and add that sound file. In other words, you or your students could add their own description to so people could actually play sound instead of having to read the text. And then you'll notice at the very bottom, I can add a point of interest. So that's where you'll find that point of interest button. And that's pretty much all there is to it, to add that scene. You'll notice here it is at the bottom of my screen. I've got the Great Zimbabwe, the UNESCO World Heritage Site has already been added. There's nothing more for me to do when I click on this publish button up here. Let me zoom in on that for you. When I click on the publish button at the top of my screen, you're going to see that that has been updated in Tour Creator. So when you guys are looking at this, you might have to refresh your view, but that's now live and available for the world to take a look at. So that's Tour Creator. It's basically as simple as I could have made it there. There's some other features that I don't really have time to go into, but you get the idea. It's very simple to use once you've identified what that Street View imagery is. And to make it even easier to use, we have provided you with a tip sheet. So if you would like to play around with Tour Creator, you're not sure where to start, you can go ahead and head over to this link, and Lisa's going to drop this in the chat as well for you to click on, and you can access our tip sheet and take a look at how to create your own tour using that tip sheet. And that brings me to the end of my segment of today's session. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you very much again for your attention.
Thank you so much, Kevin. That was really super interesting. I definitely learned some things that I can try with my own students, so I'm sure all our viewers learned something new as well there. Our next presenter is Jane Onyenyechi, all the way from Port Harcourt in Nigeria. She is currently teaching geography at Bloomberg High School. And she has more than 3 years of experience and is also a Google certified level 1 educator. Jane is going to be telling us a little bit more about traveling the world with Google Earth. And I'm excited to hear what you have done with your students. So welcome to, oh dear, I see we have a little technical problem and we have lost our next presenter. So our third presenter for today, Dylan, if you could share your screen and be ready for the presentation, and then we'll move Jane to the end of today's webinar. So you guys will get to hear from her. But so I'd like to introduce Dylan to you. If you watched our webinar last week, his face will look slightly familiar. He is the EdTech Director at Oak Hill School in Knysna, and he is going to be sharing something very interesting that they do with their grade 9s, and going to be telling you a little bit more about My Maps. So welcome, Dylan. I'm excited to hear what you're going to share with us today.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and I'm going to echo the thoughts of Kevin as well on this one. I just want to do a bit of a shout out to my African colleagues in the trenches as teachers all over the place, and also to Google, who really have been so integral in our journey as a school in terms of thinking differently and more innovatively around our teaching and learning. So my sharing with you today, I'm going to be focusing on a G Suite tool called My Maps, but I am going to be looking at it through the lens of a task that I did with students at our school. So I'm going to jump right in there and help you out with that right now. If you don't mind, I will. Sorry, I'm a little distracted right now. So using the My Maps tool, we allowed our students to track an Odyssey journey that we do at Oak Hill. So at Oak Hill, our students in grade 10 go on this journey. They do 500 kilometers in and around our area. They leave our school for 21 days, unassisted, unprotected, without luxuries. They go on a journey where they are tested physically, mentally, socially, and it's really become a real landmark moment in our students' lives, and the kids love it. Our students absolutely can't wait for grade 10 to endure a lot of pain and suffering, basically. It's really interesting, but it really is a superb moment as they spend time just out in nature and figuring themselves out. So what I did as an educator was I used the tool of my maps to take this meaningful part of their journey at our school and turn it into an activity that they would really be able to engage in. So I'm going to show you kind of the picture finished initially, and then we're going to look at some of the details. So the task that I gave them was basically a question that I posed to them, especially related to COVID at the moment. I framed it for them to say, what would happen if part of the reserves and the farms that you guys journey through on your Odyssey were closed, and we had to kind of recreate the Odyssey? Would you be able to do that as students? Would you be able to figure out where we could canoe, cycle, and hike for 21 days within our region? So obviously we're unable to transport everybody out there and get on with it. What they had to do was use Google My Maps to explore the area. I loved Kevin's phrasing, I'm going to steal it, to explore our area, to use My Maps, and then to create something of their own. I love those three words: explore, use, and create something of their own. So if you look at the screen for a little bit, you'll see the way that I framed it to them was they had to use My Maps to create or to map out 2 days of this journey. And I taught them how to use lines and markers, which I'll show you how to do in a moment. But I also gave them some limitations, because games are really fun with rules, aren't they? So they had to track at least 25 kilometers per day, no more than 45 kilometers per day, depending on the terrain and the mode of transport that they were using. I have mentioned that they had to either hike, cycle, or canoe on either of these 2 days. They had to add markers, and to bring in a bit of geography collaboration and skills, they had to mark points on their map indicating the beginning of an incline and the beginning of a decline. So just some simple map work skills coming in there. And then from a tech point of view, they had to put together a spreadsheet, which you'll see with my heading in my brief to them, was where they had to add in their planning and logistics, as if they had created the Odyssey. What logistics would need to go into this event? How do we get the bicycles to the groups? How do we support them with food and canoes and sunblock and emergency? In fact, just today we had one of the children, they're out there right now, break an ankle. And so how do we support and get around the groups in that way? So as I said, let me show you the room finished now that I've briefed you. This is how their maps would have looked. So using Google My Maps, they create 2 days. And when you look down the left-hand side of here, you'll notice that once they've added markers and lines on the area, it creates a kind of an itinerary of each day. So they had to really empathize and immerse themselves in the activity and think through how's the day going to look? What do we need? Where is it going to start, etc. So through adding markers and through creating lines in My Maps, they managed to map out a day. So you can see that this kind of chronological order follows this timeline and follows the little itinerary that populates down the side. So that's day one. My Maps works with layers over a map. You'll see if I uncheck this layer now, you'll see that those lines disappear. And here is my little start to day 2. You see I haven't put in much content to day 2. So I'll demonstrate in a moment how you work with those layers and you add that content to the map. Yeah, so great. I'm just catching my train of thought quickly. So what I told you, this is how they demonstrate their learning. They've got to map out these 2 days, but what they do is they take this content now. You'll see that over here, if I click on one of these markers, you're also able to, very similar to Tour Creator, and you'll see in a moment, similar when my colleagues share about using Google Earth Creator tools, you can also add in images to these points that you mark and some details around those marks on the map. So just making it a little bit more immersive and detailed. So from here, what they had to do now, talking to the sheet, they had to take, right, if this is the route that I'm doing, and this is what I'm putting my Odyssey participants through, what logistics would I need to think about? And this is where I used the opportunity to throw in Google Sheets and some basic Google Sheets formatting tools to take my students through. So you'll see, like in this example, the headings are frozen over here. There's data validation, which in this view you can't actually engage with, but I taught them how to insert checklists and work with some formulas. So that itinerary translated into the spreadsheet, and this spreadsheet we were able to add a little bit more information. You'll see here we pulled coordinates from those marker points as well from my maps. We also looked at the actual elevation points, which I'll demonstrate in a moment. And I taught them how they could actually work with a little checklist down the side over here as well, just to stay, an organizational tool on how they would stay organized if they were actually organizing this event. So let's jump in now and demonstrate for you how you can teach your students and yourself to set up little projects that are similar to this. So it all starts within your Google Drive. So if you had to navigate to your Google Drive, you are able to create your own map, just as you would any other tool app from G Suite. You create a map which actually lives in your drive and is therefore shareable and collaborative as well. So you don't find it initially. You're going to start at, let me just jump in there again. You're going to start at your new button as if you would create any new file. It doesn't initially pop up, so you've got to go a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole, and here you find My Maps, Google My Maps, and you just click that and it creates in a new tab a new map. So let's give that one a chance to load, and then we're going to go through just the basics as well. So quite simply, you would obviously from here, you simply name it, your untitled map. It's just hamster wheeling a bit. I'm going to give it a chance to load. So I'm going to jump right in there. I'm going to jump right in there. I'm going to jump right in there and name that one. So this was our Odyssey. Okay, and you can add a description. Goes here to the little project. All right. Now I'm going to search for our region as well. So we're going to jump right in and go straight down into Neisner, where we are located around the school. Our school's pretty much located at this pin that you can see on the screen. Now, the first thing they had to do, I had to give the students time, and it's what I loved about this activity, time to actually get to know their region. Part of the brief was they couldn't start the 2 days at the school. They had to start somewhere else within the region. So what I'm going to do for this purpose is I'm going to scroll over here a little bit. And you'll remember that one of the disciplines they had to do was they had to include canoeing. Now, in this view of the map on My Maps, it's not that easy it is quite easy to see where you've got bodies of water. You'll see that there's a little river in this region over here. If I change my base map to a satellite image, it might be a little bit tougher to see narrow bodies of water. It doesn't show up that easily. So one of the first things they needed to do was learn how to change their base map setup. So we're going to pretend for this moment that our day one, I'm going to change this to the terrain view, that our day one would start at this location over here. So to start my day one, you would have seen that they added a marker. And so we're going to first title this layer of the map day one. And then we add all the day one content to this layer of the map. And then over here, what I do is I go to the little toolbar and I select the marker tool. And I can indicate the beginning of the day over here, assuming that we had slept over that night. So start of day one. And that's where the description would go in if they wanted to add any description or logistics. They would add that in that space. And then there is also the option to add an image or video. I'm not going to go into too much detail here of how to do it because you'll see it demonstrated in the Creator Tools portion of today as well. you can select to an image from your drive or do a Google image search and choose the content that you want to put into that marker. You'll remember that I showed you that sunset marker as I was looking at my students' version of the project. So now at this point, if I can select save, I'm happy with the start of day one. You'll see that my itinerary is building here on the left-hand side. There we go, my first marker. I've also got those coordinates that have now shown up, which I can later post to that logistics sheet. Also, some more options have popped up here after I've saved to color my icon, just so that it stands out. All right, so let's just change it to purple for want of a better option at the moment, but it's really cool to explore some more of the icons over here. There are some really great icons to make this a little bit more appropriate. And if I look for one quickly, you might want to add, I could add the hiking option over here, indicating potentially the beginning of a hike at that point. All right, so now that's looking good. All right, so if that was the beginning of day one and we were going to start potentially on our canoe, what the students then would need to use is the little line tool over here, and they're actually able to track their route or their journey up the river and pull some data from that as well. So I click to activate the options there, and my best practice tip is to actually use only the add a line or shape option. Otherwise, you're not going to get what you need from using the driving or the cycling route. It just throws the project off a little bit. And then this is how you use this line tool. It can be a little bit tricky to navigate. You've got to click to activate each little bubble. And as you change direction along the river, you feel like you need to head off in a different direction. What you do is you go and you click. Every time you need to round a bend, you click, and then it drops the little bubbles. Once you're happy that you're at the end, you give it a little double click, as I did there, and now I would name it. This is our canoe for the day. I can add that description in and a photo, an image if I need to, and now I can save at this point. So now what it does is it gives us, because this was the line option and not the marker option, I actually get a distance reading over here. Remember, they had to do at least 25 kilometers, maximum 45 kilometers, depending on the discipline. So there they've got some data. That's a 2 kilometer leg of a canoe. And you'll notice down the left-hand side, once again, my itinerary is starting to build. I'm going to demo quickly as well that if there's another option here, when you select the line tool, just because you might find a different application of this in your learning area. If you take the line tool and you actually click and you close, let's pretend this was the campsite where they slept for the evening. If you close the shape, then it creates a polygon. You'll notice over here, there's a polygon which I can rename, and I can call this one campsite. Right, and we're going to save that one again, and notice now we actually get the square meterage as well. So now my brain, my educator brain, is starting to think up all kinds of maths applications as well in using my maps. So there you see it. My itinerary is building beautifully down the side. And the last thing I think I want to show you here using maps in relation to my task, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. You might have remembered that part of my brief to the students was they had to indicate the beginning of an incline or a decline along their day's journey. So you can see over here with the shading on the map in the terrain view of this map is indicating a cliff or a steep incline, but also you can see that here we have contour lines. And if you're a geography teacher, Kevin will know that contour lines are spaced 20 meters apart. So wherever they are on the leg of their line, if we had our line, let's just quickly drop a line in there. Okay, it's zoomed out now, so I'm going to quickly deactivate that line and just zoom right in again so that I can see my contour lines. Okay, let's rather work with a marker. What the students could do is they could drop a marker where they thought there would be the beginning of a decline. So if my line was tracking here in a northwesterly direction over here, if I dropped a line in that direction, the students would obviously be walking down this hill because I've got 100 meters and I'm moving down the slope towards the river, which would be more at sea level. Right, so that was just good from a geographical skills point of view as well to include. And the very last thing I want to demonstrate with you for my maps is the importance that because this is in my Google Drive, I could actually have a few students working on and collaborating on a larger journey together by using the share option. You are able to pull in collaborators and editors, and you could work on a map simultaneously and that way collaborate. You'll be familiar with this. If you're used to using G Suite, you'll know that you're able to add people or change link settings to be able to add participants to collaborate with you on your maps. I'm having a quick look. I think I've covered what we need to this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Dylan.
Great, thank you very much.
That is a super, super cool tool. I definitely learned some things from you today. So I'm sure our viewers will have enjoyed that. So thank you very much for your contribution. And I would now like to welcome our last presenter today, Jane Onyenyechi, all the way from Nigeria. As far as I know, she is with us now. And I'm very excited to learn about what you guys did with your students for about Google Earth. So feel free to take it away.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Lisa. I'm presenting on traveling virtually using Google Earth. Google Earth is a tool that has really transformed learning in the classroom. Not only it's a tool that's very accessible, and flexible. It goes across all levels and beyond. And most importantly, you can stay anywhere, So it's something accessible in spatial temporal scale, anywhere you can, even in an online class, in your confines of your bedroom, you can just access Google Earth. Now, the presentation has these outlines. Creating virtual trips, you look at how to create virtual trips, creating projects and adding new features, videos, images. If you want students to create project, maybe you've created a project for them and you want them to add new features like videos or images, they can do that. Then adding and customizing place marks. You've already created a project and you want them to add a feature or add a location. They can then eventually you can share a virtual trip. It enables collaboration too. You share your trip. If you want students to edit, maybe replace any information, they can equally do that. So let's look at other ones. Let's take them one after the other. I would like to show the practical examples or applications of this Google Earth. So during the pandemic, I took my students to Lagos State. I was teaching urbanization, so I showed them Lagos, how Lagos looked like. They saw the area. Even I equally took them to the Amazon because I treated the vegetation. So I took them to Amazon in Brazil. We looked at vegetation. If you take a look at this vegetation now, it will enable students understand more. You can see if I'm describing the characteristics of rainforest vegetation, they follow because they can see it themselves. It's something, because you usually say that seeing is believing. So it's not abstract. They are there, they are seeing it. It is real. They can see the aspects, the creepers, the roots. So the varieties of trees in the rainforest vegetation, then the epiphytes, even the soil, they know that, okay, this rainforest receives rainfall all the year round and the environment is evergreen, so they understand. It just enables the students understand and assimilate everything you've been taught, especially the visual learners. They assimilate more when they see things in real life. So it brings reality to your classroom. I equally took them to Kilimanjaro. My internet connection is not secure, but I took them to Kilimanjaro where they saw the Mount Kilimanjaro. They saw the ice caps on Mount Kilimanjaro and extinct volcano. They were able to see all these things. So I equally like to show how you can create projects, on Google Earth. You want your students to do something, you come here, you create your project, you come here, you create projects in Google Drive. What this enables you to do is it's already saved in the drive, it's automatically saved. So anywhere you can go to your drive and access it. So you title the project, whatever you want. Maybe you want to, you want them to work on River Niger, you can title your project. Then you can search for any information you want. Then having done that, you can equally get your any feature you want them to do. Just like here now, you can add any description, you can get other features, you can capture your screen image, you can equally add and present to any other feature you want. Then another one is adding and customizing place marks. If you want to customize place mark, you come here, you type your whatever you want to present. After adding your description, then you, assuming you want to go back to the rainforest, okay, you can come here, get a location for your place mark, then write whatever you want to pick. Select a location, then title the location. You can edit the place too. You can edit the area. You can write any description for your place mark. You can get another color. You can change the color you want, like this color, this is blue. You can change it to red. Then any other landmark, you can equally title the landmarks. Then the last one is sharing a virtual trip. How do you share a virtual trip? How do you share a virtual trip? You come here, you get your link. Since you already created a project in the drive, you can always go to your drive, get a shareable link as well, and go into the classroom. Like here now, you can copy the link, now move to the classroom, move to your classroom and share the link with them. So when you share you can share the link as the material. Look at here now. You go to create. If you want it an assignment, you want them to maybe state any other features you want, maybe a physical feature, a natural feature, you can come here, pick as an assignment or take as a material for them to have. Then once you pick as an assignment, it takes you to that page where you create your assignment. You get the URL which you've already picked, then you add, you get your link, you place it, then you add it. Then students now have the link to that project in the classroom. Like I said earlier, you can equally go to the drive and get a shareable link for this project. So it's there in the classroom. So this Google Earth enables students to understand and assimilate easily what they've been taught. Now, these are other images. Although students can equally flip through the pages of their textbooks to get some images of locations, but it will not really be as interesting as it will when they are navigating through Google Earth. This is an image from Google Earth. My internet connection is not friendly. I would have opened it to show you the Amazon. Okay, so these are all the things, the real world examples. Like I said, we went to Lagos, the Mount Kilimanjaro, the Amazon rainforest, even the savannah. They had to see the difference between a rainforest and a savannah. And equally, the Yellowstone National Park, they were able to see the valley, the depression, the coniferous forests in the Amazon. So here now, this is a location in Nigeria, Lagos State. When we went there, the students were able to tell me some other features, the human features, the physical features they are seeing, then the problems of overpopulation, because I asked them a question based on what they saw. They were able to decode the problems in this area and the dangers of urbanization. So Google Earth is something that exposes these students, they learn on their own, and equally have more expository nature of their location. It helps them to have a feel of their environment, know certain locations even before getting there, and it makes your class exciting. It eradicates boredom, boring nature of the class. And geography being a huge subject, it gives them this insight they are there. They have this feeling that they are already there. So this type of scene now creates a feeling that they're already in Lagos. They see even people, the students that have not gone to Lagos before, they were able to have a kind of feeling. All of them, they were navigating through it. They were so excited and they wanted more. Actually, it makes learning very easy. It enables easy understanding of the concept, and it equally brings out the creativity in the teacher, because you have to create your own project, add some features you want in the project, and just to make your class interesting and exciting. So I will say Google Earth is a tool, is a transformation tool that has given a boost in the education sector. So I will want all schools to have the Google Earth, and equally get abreast with Google Earth and flow with it. So that's all for now. As I have shown how to create virtual trips, then real examples, creating projects, adding and customizing place marks, and eventually sharing a virtual trip. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really think that it's an amazing tool, and you definitely showed us some cool things. So it's absolute magic in the classroom, and definitely something that all our educators should be trying. So thank you very, very much for that, Jane. All our presenters are going to come in now for the Q&A part of today. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching. We have one or two questions, and then if there's anything else that our presenters would like to share, then I'll give them a chance to do that as well. Our first question is from a viewer in South Africa who said that she has heard of Google Arts and Culture. Does it fit into this area? Are there any resources for virtual learning experiences there? Is it similar to Google Earth? Is it different? And I think that Kevin is the best person to explain that, as I know he's quite passionate about Google Arts and Culture.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, Adiel, if you aren't sharing my screen, I'd appreciate it if you could do that. So arts and culture is a collection of so much that I can't even describe it, but literally millions and millions and millions and millions of artifacts from around the world that have been curated by museums, national parks, other cultural organizations. And Google has created this space called Arts and Culture to store all of those. You see up in the left, it says Arts and Culture. And I happened to start out at the Great Barrier Reef because I love this particular tour, because it allows me to click and drag, and I can actually swim around underneath the reef. So this takes Street View imagery, again, that's on Google Maps, but it's also available in Google Earth. And here we are in Arts and Culture, and we can take some tours around the Great Barrier Reef, and click and drag and see what we can see. But in Africa, we have a number of resources as well. So I happened to just go online and I Googled Kenya to see what was available. And just at the National Museums of Kenya, this is just one of the museums, and there are many museums, we have a number of stories. So we have 170 stories that have been created by that National Museums of Kenya. And they have curated these for us. There's the Nairobi Art Gallery that I showed you earlier, but we can also go in and see an online exhibit about the process of digitizing the collections of the National Museums of Kenya. So it's sort of a behind the scenes, how does Google do this, or how did the museum digitize their collection and make it available in arts and culture? And arts and culture includes more than just museums, as I said. It also includes items from around the world. But there are hundreds of museums all over the world that have contributed to Google Arts and Culture and made their exhibits available to the rest of the world. You could spend the rest of your life taking a virtual tour of the museums and artifacts that are sitting in Google Arts and Culture. So I encourage you all to head over to artsandculture.google.com. Maybe pour yourself a glass of wine or a beer and be prepared to spend a few hours just exploring.
Wow, it really is just amazing how many resources are out there for us to use as teachers. Thanks, Kevin. A question for Dylan on the practicality of the project you described. How long did your learners actually spend working on that project?
Great question. That took us about 5 or 6 lessons. Yet, you know, there's a few layers to that, as you would have seen with the project. Is sometimes just exploring the area and finding the right starting point. I had to kind of manage and help the students to stay on task and stay focused on actually making a decision and getting on with it. Also, there are a couple of tech skills involved there. And what I did was I actually did screencast tutorials for them, and I built them into that sheet. So I'm not sure if I'm sharing my screen, but you'll see. If we can get my screen up, I'm just going to go to the StreamYard quickly and make sure that I am sharing my screen. But yeah, basically I built in little video clips linked into the task, where if I was asking them to freeze headings in the sheets or enter a checklist or do a sum formula, I actually gave them little video links where they could go and learn and practice those skills. It is time consuming, and it can be challenging from that point of view when you've got other curriculum pressures. But if you can, what I did was I teamed with the geography teacher and did some of my technology lessons. And then, yeah, they spent about 5 hours on it. And it was in no shape or form a homework task at all. They had that time in class with our support to get through that.
Fantastic. So there was even some collaboration between the teachers as well. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that, Dylan. I see that our time is almost done for today. So I'd like to thank all our presenters. I'm sure our viewers learned a lot, and all our viewers that are still on their way will, watching the recording, will also learn a lot. And then I'd just like to mention our webinar from next week. So please tune in next week. We are going to be talking about gamification in learning. It's quite a buzzword at the moment, but we're going to unpack a little bit how you can bring the elements of games that are so enticing to students into education to motivate their learning. So don't forget to join us next week at the same time. And thank you very much for watching today. And once again, thank you to all the presenters. Goodbye.
Thanks, Lisa. Cheers. Bye.